Well, hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. I am Greg here today. Before I get into my best and worst of the year, to do a little bit of a book haul for December. Now, I did not actually bring a whole lot of books into my own library in the month of December. I spent more money buying other presents for other people, but I am going to also take this video as a chance to do a sort of unboxing and a little bit of a preview for something that I'm going to be doing more of in the month of January, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. Now let's do the book haul portion of this video first. There are only 3 books that go into that. The first 2 come from Book of the Month. Now, I had a whole thing with Book of the Month in December because I didn't actually want any of their official Book of the Month picks, but I did want Trick Mirror by Jia Tolentino, which was one of the add-ons that they offered. However, I discovered you can't get an add-on for Book of the Month if you don't pick one of their add-ons, or if you don't pick one of their official Book of the Month selections. So I ended up picking one of them just to get Trick Mirror by Jia Tolentino. I'll get to the other one in a second. Let's start with this. So if you are unaware, this has gotten a lot of really great feedback. I'm very interested in reading it. The subtitle is Reflections on Self-Delusion. Let's read the blurb of this. Jia Tolentino is a peerless voice of her generation, tackling the conflicts, contradictions, and sea changes that define us and our time. Now in this dazzling collection of 9 entirely original essays written with a rare combination of give and sharpness, wit and fearlessness, that she delves into the forces that warp our vision, demonstrating an unparalleled stylistic potency and critical dexterity. Trick Mirror is an enlightening, unforgettable trip through the river of self-delusion that surges just beneath the surface of our lives. I mean, I am so sold on this book. I can't wait to read it. Now, usually in my book hauls, I read lately I've been reading the first sentence. I'm going to do that here. Sentence 1 of Trick Mirror. In the beginning, the internet seemed good. There you go. So the book that I chose in order to get Trick Mirror was Long Bright River by Liz Moore. This is in a Philadelphia neighborhood rocked by the opioid crisis. 2 once inseparable sisters find themselves at odds. One, Casey, lives on the streets in the vice of addiction. The other, Mickey, walks those same blocks on her police beat. They don't speak anymore, and the police department has no idea of their connection, but Mickey never stops worrying about her sibling. And then Casey disappears, and then it becomes like Mickey is looking for her sister. It's a kind of a whodunit / thriller from there. Let's do the first sentence of this. There's a body on the Gurney Street tracks. My. So it's not necessarily... I've just had really bad luck with thrillers, mysteries, psychological, call it what you will. I've had really bad luck with them lately. So I'm feeling like I'm not in a mood for them a whole lot. However, this does sound interesting. So, we'll see. And if nothing else, it let me get Trick Mirror. The next one, I will explain why I got more, because this is going to tie into one of my reading goals for 2020. It's The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a classic. I've never read it. I have read, I believe, a book by Ursula K. Le Guin, but that's it. And I'm not really familiar with her work, so I'm looking forward to getting more familiar with her through this book in 2020. So if you're unfamiliar, a lone human ambassador is sent to the icebound planet of Winter, a world without sexual prejudice, where the inhabitants' gender is fluid. His goal is to facilitate Winter's inclusion in a growing intergalactic civilization. But to do so, he must bridge the gulf between his own views and those of the strange, intriguing culture he encounters. Embracing the aspects of psychology, society, and human emotion on an alien world, The Left Hand of Darkness stands as a landmark achievement in the annals of science fiction. And the first sentence is... I'll make my report as if I told a story, for I was taught as a child on my home world that truth is a matter of the imagination. Well, that right there is really interesting. So those are the 3 books I brought into my library as like new things in the month of December. Now, the other thing that's happened is my father recently moved, and I had books that I was storing at his house. And because he is moving, I didn't want them to get lost in the move, so he kindly agreed to ship them to me, and I got 3 large boxes of books and 1 small box of books. So I'm going to show you what was in the first box, the small one, and then in the month of January, I'm going to unbox the 3 big ones, and we'll see how that goes. The small one was interesting because it didn't just have books, and it'll be interesting to see if the other one does as well. It also had some little things, like there was a funeral card from my Aunt Connie's funeral in 2004, which I'm really happy to have because I loved my Aunt Connie. She was a wonderful person. So I didn't even really realize I was missing this, but it's nice to have it again. There is an understudy card from the playbill for the musical Chicago, which I saw with my sister a couple of years, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe even. Oh, time flies. The program to the musical Sweet Charity, starring Christina Applegate, which I also saw with my sister roughly 15 years ago, and really enjoyed. The playbill to the play Doubt, which I saw and really enjoyed, also saw with my sister roughly 15 years ago. The playbill for The Light in the Piazza, a musical which I also saw with my sister roughly 15 years ago. And part of the reason I love hanging on to playbills from shows is that it gives you, well, it's fun to look back at the things that you saw, first of all, but also just interesting things like when I saw Light in the Piazza, I saw it with Matthew Morrison before he ever did Glee or anything like that. And because I have the playbill, I can go back and say, yes, I definitely did see it with him. So those were the non-book items that were in the first box. Getting into the books, we have Harbor by Lorraine Adams, which I read when it first came out in paperback, and I remember really liking. I don't remember a lot of details, and it would kind of be interesting to go back and read this again. So if you are unfamiliar with this book, it is a tremendously acclaimed and exquisitely realized novel of literary suspense. Harbor recounts the adventures of Aziz Arkoun, who at 24 makes his way to America via the hold of an Algerian tanker. Though Aziz soon finds himself a community of fellow Algerians, their means of survival in this strange land begin to remind him of the dangerous world he was desperate to escape. Moving from East Boston and Brooklyn to Montreal and a North African army camp, Harbor takes us inside the ambiguities of Aziz and his friends' past and present lives. When Aziz discovers that they are under surveillance, all assumptions, his and ours, dissolve in urgent, mesmerizing complexity. This book was published in the wake of 9/11, and it very much is a post 9/11 novel. Copyright 2004. It would be interesting to go back and reread it and see how it holds up as we have gotten further away from 9/11. Next is Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress by Dai Siji. I really don't know how to pronounce that name, and I'm sorry, I feel terrible. This is a book I have not ever gotten around to reading and would love to get around to reading, so I'm very happy to have a copy again. In this enchanting tale about the magic of reading and the wonder of romantic awakening, two hapless city boys are exiled to a remote mountain village for re-education during China's infamous Cultural Revolution. There they meet the daughter of the local tailor and discover a hidden stash of Western classics in Chinese translation. As they flirt with the seamstress and secretly devour these banned works, they find transit from their grim surroundings to worlds they had never imagined. Now, this actually will also fit one of my reading goals for next year, so I'm even doubly excited to have it back. I forgot to read the first sentence of Harbor, since we're doing this as a book haul. Water never warms in American harbors. So there you go. And now let's do the first sentence of Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress, which, by the way, it's just a beautifully bound book in its own right. First sentence is, the village headman, a man of about 50, sat cross-legged in the center of the room, close to the coals, burning in a hearth that was hollowed out of the door. He was inspecting my violin. And there you go. Next is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It'll be interesting to see if the Lord of the Rings books are in the other boxes, because I'm pretty sure I had all of them in this same style. The Hobbit is obviously the one that I read first, and I really did enjoy The Hobbit. I ended up not finishing the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I finally determined I made it to Return of the King, but did not get more than 100 pages into it. But I did really enjoy The Hobbit very much. If you don't know what The Hobbit is about, I really don't know what to tell you. But let's do the first sentence. It is, in a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Next is a very small book, The Tale of the Unknown Island by Jose Saramago. This is the only book other than Blindness I have read by Jose Saramago, and it is really, really, as you can see, very tiny. It is only 51 pages. I really want to read another book by Jose Saramago. He's a Nobel laureate. Blindness is a fantastic book. I actually would even like to reread that one, because part of me, as I've moved away from reading it, I want to experience it again, if that makes sense. So this one is almost like a fairy tale. It's the story of how the two bravest people in a kingdom of cowards manage to find, inspire, and finally love one another. In this richly imagined tale, illustrated with the beautiful drawings of Peter Siss, Nobel laureate Saramago shows that sometimes dreaming is the true path to happiness. And the first sentence is, a man went to knock at the king's door and said, "Give me a boat." And this is, by the way, this is translated from the Portuguese by Margaret Jewel Costa. So there you go. Next is a book I never got around to reading, so I'm glad I will have it in my library again. It's Thomas Wolfe's Look Homeward, Angel. Apparently my grandfather was a fan of this book, and my father's father died before I was old enough to really be able to talk about books with him, and I kind of wish, because my father's parents were both readers, so it's a shame they were both gone, but before I really had a chance to talk to them about books. But apparently my grandfather was a huge fan of this book, and my father, who is not a reader at all, is a really big fan of the. It opens with a poem, I believe. Yeah, there's a poem at the beginning in part 1. A stone, a leaf, an unfound door. Of a stone, a leaf, a door, and of all the forgotten faces. My father calls that one of his favorite pieces of writing ever. I don't think he's actually read the rest of the book, but it's just an interesting little point of fact for you there. So the first sentence of this is, a destiny that leads the English to the Dutch is strange enough, but one that leads from Epsom into Pennsylvania, and thence into the hills that shut in Altamont over the proud choral cry of the cock, and the soft stone smile of an angel, is touched by that dark miracle of chance which makes new magic in a dusty world. Look Homeward, Angel is the coming-of-age story of Eugene Gant, whose restlessness and yearning to experience life to the fullest take him from his rural home in North Carolina to Harvard. Through his rich, ornate prose and meticulous attention to detail, Wolfe evokes the peculiarities of small-town life and the pain and upheaval of leaving home. Heavily autobiographical, Look Homeward, Angel is Wolfe's most turbulent and passionate work, and a brilliant novel of lasting impact. This is something I've been looking forward to reading for a very, very long time, almost 20 years, so I'm glad I have a copy of it now. And the final book that was in the first box is the collected stories of Tennessee Williams, with an introduction by Gore Vidal. I went through a phase roughly, 17 years ago, or somewhere in the early 2000s, so almost 20 years ago, where I read a lot of plays by Tennessee Williams, and I had this idea that I was also going to read his short stories, and I never got around to doing it. So I'm very much looking forward to doing it. This combines 4 short story volumes that were published during Tennessee Williams' lifetime, and has some previously unpublished or uncollected stories as well. There are, as you can see, a lot of them. I don't know if I will read the whole thing in 2020, but I would like to read parts of it, because one thing I want to do is try to dip into some more short stories. I think I only read 1 short story collection in all of 2019, and I love short stories, so I want to dip back into that. So, first sentence of the first story. Okay, the first story in this collection is called The Vengeance of Nitocris. Hushed were the streets of many peopled Thebes. And there you have it. So, there are the 3 books that I brought into my library for the first time in December, and a couple more books that I brought back into my library after a long time away, as well as some fun little artifacts from the past. Now, if you have any wisdom about any of these books, if you think there's anything that I should prioritize for 2020, please let me know. If there's anything you think I could back burner in 2020, let me know that as well. Love to hear what you have brought into your library in the month of December, especially if you got any gifts. I didn't get any Christmas gifts that were bookish this year, which is a little disappointing, but also kind of expected. You know, people don't like to buy me books in general, because they're worried that I've already read it or they're not interested in reading it. It is what it is. But if you got a nice Christmas haul or just a holiday haul, I'd love to hear what you got. And as always, I really appreciate your time watching this video, and I hope you'll be back again. I certainly will. And until then, happy reading.